minutes. And what I've learned is you don't make the ladies preparing the food in church mad. So we're going to try to keep this to 20, 30 minutes. Sound good? All right, sounds good. Awesome. So, my name is Jeremiah Wallander. I currently serve at Michigan Lutheran Seminary as a tutor. I'll explain a little bit more of that in just a little bit. Now, what's interesting is a month and a half ago, I think it was, the Synod office contacted me, and they were like, hey, we would like you to preach out in Freeland and present on missions. And I was just like, you got the wrong guy. Because I'm in a school. I am very far from missions right now. And they're like, oh, no, you figured out at Hope Toronto, didn't you? I was like, oh, yeah, I did that. And they're like, well, how about you talk about that? And I was like, I can do that. So I'm going to talk to you today about what's it like, especially because this is relatively new, the whole being a vicar in a mission setting. That's what I'm going to present to you today. So, who am I? Well, my name is Jeremiah Wallander. That's my beautiful wife right there, Kelly. She's here somewhere, probably feeding our daughter, who we just had recently, so she's somewhere right there. So that's me and my wife, Kelly. We both actually are from Appleton, Wisconsin, and we both graduated from Fox Valley Lutheran. She graduated in 2013. I graduated in 2015. As you could see, I was super cool. And then right after that, I graduated in 2015, went on to MLC on the pastor track right there, and I graduated from Martin Luther College in 2019. Then right after that, went to Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary in Mequon, and just graduated from there as a pastor this past year, back in May. And then in August, so in May I was assigned to Michigan Lutheran Seminary. In August I was installed and ordained for this school year to be a tutor. What's really exciting to me about being a tutor is that I get to teach the next generation of our pastors and teachers. I currently teach the junior religion and theology, so currently going through the New Testament right now with all of them. It's interesting, a lot of people ask me, after assignment day, they're like, we need pastors in pulpits. Why are they sending you to a school? And I said, they want me to go there and encourage especially young men to be pastors and to teach them. And if it's about preaching, then let me tell you, I sometimes give chapel 3 times a week. So I'm preaching more in a school than I would be in a church, if that's what it comes down to for you. I also do a lot of counseling for the students as well. They come to me with all different kinds of problems, and I try my best to help them. And I constantly have to remind them that I've only been a pastor for 2 months, so I'm still figuring this whole thing out. But no, it's been really good. I love MLS. I love serving there. So, talking about this, what do you think? Give me some ideas here. What do you think is part of the pastoral job description? Give me a couple things. The gospel. Yeah, preaching the gospel. Excellent. What else? What's in the pastoral job description? Counseling. Yep. Preaching the gospel, counseling. Anything else?
Eat the sick.
Yeah, visiting the sick, all different kinds of things for sure. Well, this is what Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary says. This is what we want to prepare pastors to do, especially pastors that we're going to be sending out in the mission field. Well, they have different responsibilities: preaching, performing marriages and funerals, teaching, visiting the sick and homebound, counseling, designing, guiding and leading worship, personal witnessing, the mission of the congregation. That's what they want us to do. Well, there's also some spiritual qualifications to this as well. Being evangelical, mission-minded, vibrant faith in the triune God, a heart of love for people, knowledge of the Bible and doctrine, strong worship and devotional life, the ability and eagerness to witness, the ability to teach, self-discipline, self-control, patience. This is what they want spiritually from guys that they're sending out. Well, personality traits, well then they're emotionally stable, persevering, responsible, humble, yet a leader, able to identify and use resources, flexible, socially skilled, culturally sensitive. And then what's the education for it? Well, in order that they want pastors to go up, well, they got to have a bachelor's degree, Master of Divinity, so it's 3 years in the classroom, 1-year internship, which we're going to be talking about, learning and using the original languages of Scripture, Hebrew and Greek. So then I kind of look at all of these things, and I think I have like a 40% hit rate on some of those, maybe 30%. Emotionally stable, humble yet a leader. I'm not sure I'm always very humble, and I'm not always the best leader. Able to identify and use resources. course, you know, there's all these different things you look through and you're like, man, this is what seminary wants me to be. This is what they want me to do, especially if they want us to go start missions. But then, what's that a reminder to us? When I look at this list, you know what a reminder it is to me? I'm not everything. I'm certainly not. But He's everything. It's not about me. I have to constantly remind myself about that. It's not about me. It's about Him. So that's what they want from pastors, especially going out. You know, and seminary has kind of changed, especially, you know, this is how it used to look over in Mequon. You know, it started in Watertown, then in Wauwatosa, then there in Mequon. And now, like, this campus looks somewhat the same, but the classrooms especially look different, too, of how they're training men to be pastors and missionaries. You know, it's changed in that kind of way. But then, what the big change that seminary made some years ago, I don't know the exact year, maybe Pastor Muskie might know, but some years ago they decided that, okay, there's a certain year and we want to change kind of how we do that year for the students. Well, let me describe to you first what those years are at seminary. Well, the first year, of course, is your junior year. That's your first year at seminary, and that's when you learn how to preach. You learn how to preach a sermon. Well, then the next year is your middler year. And during your middler year, what you do is you learn how to teach catechism, Bible study, Bible information class, those kinds of things. And then you go off somewhere, but then you come back for your senior year, and that's when you write your senior thesis, which is like a minimum 35-page paper about whatever topic in pastoral ministry that you want to write about. But then there's a year in the middle there, and of course, you know what I'm talking about, that's the vicar year. So seminary decided that they wanted to instead change the vicar year, because the importance of the vicar year in training pastors can hardly be overestimated. It allows students a year to put into practice what they have learned in the classroom by placing students in mission congregations or established congregations with a mission mindset. They see how integral outreach is to ministry, because the mission spirit is more caught than taught. Day in and day out, vicars watch and learn from a man who has a gospel heart for members and for the lost. So, seminary vicaring used to be most guys, no, not every guy, but it seemed like years ago, most guys just vicared in and around Wisconsin or the Midwest. Am I right about that, Pastor? That used to be how it is. Now, not saying that's rare, but actually most guys now go off to vicar in different places, usually not Wisconsin. And sometimes, in fact, usually not even the Midwest. People vicar all kinds of different places. And in fact, I got to vicar in a pretty exciting spot. I got to vicar, of course, where did I go? My third year of seminary, vicaring out in Toronto, Canada, which was very exciting to me because I was under the impression that if they send you out of the country, they ask you first, and no one asked me at all. So I was shocked. In fact, the afternoon, it was vicar call day. We get done with class. It's our last day of classes of the year. We're finding out that night at 7 p.m. where we're going to be sent off for our vicar year. So, of course, me and all my classmates, we went down to the local pub, and we're hanging out there and just talking with each other, and people are saying this and that, and we have one guy, he's fluent in Spanish. He's so good at Spanish. We knew there was a vicar call to Colombia. So we asked him, we're like, Zach, what do you think about Colombia? You think that's going to happen? He goes, I don't think it's going to happen, guys. No one talked to me. I kind of felt bad for him. So then in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm certainly not going to Canada because no one talked to me. And we both were like, oh, okay. So then we both were the two that were sent out of the country. He went down to Colombia. He preached almost every week in Spanish. And then I was sent to Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Now, do you guys know anything about Toronto at all?
Cultural.
Yes, that is the number one thing. Toronto, if not the most culturally diverse city in the world, is up there. It's up there. I think sometimes it all depends on when they take those, census stuff. So sometimes it's number one, sometimes it's not, it goes back and forth. But when you go there, you totally notice it right away. It is so culturally diverse, and it is so exciting to be there. In fact, I'll be honest, right when I got there and I went to the congregation, I found out I'm one of the only white people here. And that's okay, because I needed to learn what that looked like, because I grew up in Wisconsin, then I went to college in Minnesota, then I came back to school in Wisconsin. So this is something where I was like, I've spent time among other cultures, but not a significant amount of time. And so this was really good for me. So I got sent here. This is Hope Lutheran Church. In fact, my bishop, that's like the overseeing pastor, is right here. His name is Pastor Mark Henrich, and he has so much experience with this kind of stuff too. He was originally assigned down to the Caribbean to be a pastor there. Then he was called up to Milwaukee to serve at a mostly black church there. And then he got called to Hope in Toronto to serve there. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Hope. Hope Lutheran Church in Toronto. Well, like we said, Toronto is the most diverse city in the world. So you know what's great? Hope Lutheran Church, the most diverse church we have in the entire Wells. It is incredible. There are 27 different countries represented there. Every continent besides Antarctica is represented among this church. It is amazing. And you see it right away. Like I said, you know, it's a mostly, I would say most of the people there are black, but not all of them are from the Caribbean. Some of them are from Africa. Some of them are even from Europe and other places too, as well. But there's a lot of different people. So it is, again, a mostly black congregation. And I think I don't mean this like in a how would I say this correctly? So like when I was preaching, I learned that these people, especially these Caribbean people, it's very interactive when you preach to them. And there's no such thing as a rhetorical question. So you say, have you guys ever? And then there's Miss Andra in the front. Oh yeah! Yep, I've been there, I've experienced that. And then they start having a conversation. Like, okay, sounds good, you know. I also learned that they really want you to just pray on the spot. A good preacher knows how to pray on the spot. So for our prayer of the church, were things printed out? No way. We were taking prayer requests, and everyone was wearing masks and speaking in different accents. So I was constantly saying, can you please repeat yourself, please? I can't understand what they're saying. Like, can you pray for Yara? 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 I'm saying what you're saying. Like, or there's another one. There's an Australian family. They're like, can you please pray for Tyler? Can you pray for Tyler? Who's Tyler? Oh, Taylor! Taylor, their daughter! That's who, you know, it's stuff like that. I had to navigate a lot. But it was really, really great. Constantly, you know, you ended the sermon and you said amen, and everyone says amen as loud as you can. And then after the blessing, right when I'm done, and I say amen, and everyone goes amen. That's what they want. This is how they want church to be. They want it to be interactive. They want to participate in those kinds of things. And I had to learn how to do that. Another thing I had to learn how to do is that in a lot of their home countries, they are used to hours-long church, right? So if my sermon was ever under 20 minutes, they were like, well, what's the point? Why did I come here? So I had to learn how to preach for 25, even sometimes 30 minutes, because that's what they want. Because that's what you do. You go, and if it's appropriate, and it fits with the gospel, and it fits with the mission and what they do, you do what the people are used to, and what they expect, and what they want. So I had to get used to that, and it was awesome. But let me show you a couple of photos. This is how diverse the campus is, and this doesn't even scratch the surface of it. So we have people at Hope Toronto who are from India. We have people who are from China. In fact, this man, he's studying to be a pastor right now. And then it sounds like once he's done studying to be a pastor, they're going to have him reach out to the Chinese people in and around Ontario. We have people also from the Caribbean, just right here. And people oftentimes will even come to church in their traditional garb that they wear from their home countries. And also, one other great thing that separates, unless you guys know about this, some might not. Do you know what separates worship from Hope from any other Wells congregation?
The steel pan.
Yes! Every Sunday they have the steel pan orchestra that plays. I mean, there's an organ, there's a piano, there's stuff like that too. But the steel drum orchestra plays as well too. And then like, what's the best song? It was like, these are the days of Elijah. You know, and so like the last two hymns was like 15 minutes long. Because everyone's, like one time I remember there was a family, a pastor's family, he was from South Dakota, and they were visiting, and we actually had to tell him before the church, now this is probably going to look a little different than it does in Watertown, South Dakota, and you're going to look more stupid if you don't participate. So you're going to look dumb if you don't, so just join in. So then we're sitting there, and we're singing this song, and the steel band orchestra, they're all going, and they're moving like this, and everyone's clapping and singing, and you can see this pastor and his family. I had to get used to that too. That wasn't something that necessarily always came naturally to me as well, but it was fun. You learn and you see this excitement for the gospel, this excitement for love and that kind of thing, and we see this mission mindset. They're like, this is the kind of church we are. This is our identity. And so what are we going to do? We're going to reach out to the community because we want this church to look like the community here. And so, of course, the community is very diverse, very vibrant, so that's the way the church is going to be. Well, how do they reach out to the community? What are some ways they make the mission happen? Well, this is what they do. Biggest thing they don't have a soccer camp, they don't have a sports camp, and that's okay. That's great when other churches do, but they're like, we're a very musical church. So musical. And in all honesty, they have professional musicians, a lot of them. A lot of professional musicians actually go to church there as well. So they're said, we're going to have a music camp. And it's a week-long music camp, usually in July, and this is what it looks like, right here. I'm a drummer myself. I don't read notes very well, but I know rhythm pretty well, which I think is also part of the reason why I was sent there. I actually drummed for every church service as well for the children's message. And so they have this music camp here where kids learn how to play piano, even simply. There's even a guitar lessons. I led a drumming sectional. Then they all gather for a lesson in God's word and also with song and stuff like that. So this is another way. This is how they reach out. They say, we're really good at music. So we're really good at music, we're going to put on a music camp. I think that's really smart. What's your congregation's identity? If this is our identity, then let's use that. If these are the gifts God has given us, then let's do that. Has God given us a lot of soccer players or a lot of sports people? Not really. He's given us a lot of music people, so that's what we'll do. But then, there's other things that they decide too, to reach out to the community. Is this, Steps for Hope. This is another thing that usually goes on, usually around May or June. And it's a 5K, just around. People get t-shirts, and it's a 5K where a lot of people come. And at this one, it started off with Zumba. You know what Zumba is? Have you heard of that? It's kind of like this dance exercise thing. Started off with Zumba, then everyone gathered for the race, and then they went around, ran the 5K, times were kept, then we had a potluck and fun afterwards. In fact, it was actually pretty fun because the police ended up showing up. And then the police were there, and we thought, oh no, are they here because the music's too loud? And they're like, no, we saw food, so we wanted to join in. And so even the police officers, they're coming by, and they want to join in on that, and that was so fun. And then the community reached out there too. Then one other thing that they do really well is each Christmas, they have a Christmas concert filled with singing, dancing, steel band orchestra, piano, drumming. It's like an hour-and-a-half long concert where it's packed. Like the church is full to the brim. They have to set up seating out in the narthex back there. And people just come, even people who aren't members of the church, they just know, well, Hope has their Christmas concert every year, so we want to go to that. This is how they reach out. Now, these are only 3 things, and these are probably the 3 biggest things that Hope does. But what I saw through this is how many people in the congregation, when I would visit them, and I'd say, I just get there as a vicar and I'd say, oh, what made you join Hope? Oh, well, my kids started going to the music camp. And we really liked it. So then we joined. Oh, my kids, we took them out for a night because we heard there was a Christmas concert there, and we were so impressed, and it was so well done, and people were so friendly, and we just joined and haven't turned back ever since. We heard there was a 5K, and we wanted to join in on this 5K, so we showed up, and everyone was so welcoming and warm, and we joined, and I just love it here. There were stories after stories about that. These people, they had no idea, some of them had no idea what Lutheran was. Certainly not WELS. We find out about that later as they do Bible information class. But they joined because the congregation was so warm, so welcoming, so friendly, very social. After church each Sunday, it's like what we're doing, this potluck that we're doing afterwards, they do that every Sunday after church. And just gather together, because why hurry? Now that's also something I had to learn too. the whole why hurry mentality. Also, with a lot of these people who come from different cultures, in America, we really care about just being on time. I found out we are in the minority in the world on that. No one else cares about being on time. Church would start, 5, 6, sometimes 10 minutes late, not because Pastor and I really liked it, but because the people just were like, why hurry? Who cares? We're here, we're coming. Everything was very laid back. I even remember there was one time it was 11:05. Church was supposed to start at 11. It was 11:05 and I was like, okay, well, I'm doing the liturgy today, Pastor's preaching, so, all right, the organ is just ending now. All right, I got up and I'm just about to say good morning, and right before I say good morning, the organ just starts playing again. I was like, okay, I'm sitting back down now. So then I did, and I sat back down, because that's how everyone is. Who cares? Take it easy. Take your time, that kind of thing. I even remember I asked my bishop, I was like, well, what time do you want me to come in each day? And he goes, just come in. I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, what time do you actually want me to come in? He goes, I'm going to be honest, Jeremiah. When I got here, I said the same thing, and they all yelled at me, saying, like, just come in whenever you want to come in. So then I kind of made it my practice that I would show up between 9 and 9:30, and then, the other thing was, when I was done, sometimes it'd be noon, sometimes it'd be 1, sometimes it'd be 3, it didn't matter, depended on the day. I'd go to my bishop's office, I'd be like, hey, Mark, do you need anything else? And he'd go, nah, get out of here. Because that's the culture. Everything was so laid back. Why hurry? Why get all worked up about things? Take it easy. Take it nice. That was how it was. And I learned a lot about that. I think that was just hope in a nutshell. It's the most diverse church we have in the entire Synod. Also, I don't know if you noticed in that first one, all the flags of every country that's represented in the congregation are in the back. In fact, my first assignment was I had to memorize every flag, what it was too. And then I had to show my bishop I know what each flag is. And that was good. That was a good practice as well.
Under hope, does that say Lutheran Church?
Yes, yes.
So you say Lutheran?
Yes, they do know. And now, here's what's also interesting too. You know the country Guyana? So this is where a lot of the people, it's like a little bit south of the Caribbean, South America, a lot of the people come from Guyana. And they came up to Toronto because a lot of them were just getting out of Guyana, and Toronto is where they landed. And I didn't know this, but Guyana is of all these like Caribbean places or South American places, it is the most Lutheran country of all of them. Apparently the Missouri Synod Lutherans, like years and years ago, early 1900s I want to say, I could be wrong on that, they just got down to Guyana, and now like a lot of the churches in Guyana are just Lutheran. So of course all these Guyanese people get up to Toronto, and they're looking, where's a Lutheran church? And they find one, and it ends up being Hope. That's interesting, isn't it? So a lot of them do these kinds of things. In fact, sometimes they even make, they want church to be very interactive. So in the past, for Reformation Sunday, you know what they do? They built a brick wall behind the altar, like back there. It's this brick wall representing the mighty fortress. And they actually have someone come on in and nail 95 theses at the front to remind them, isn't that interesting? All these Guyanese people, like they still care about their Lutheran heritage as well, because this is what they grew up with, and this is what they grew up understanding as well, too. It's just really cool. So a lot of the things that I learned, at Hope as a vicar, and especially learning this mission mindset and being in a mission church is this. I really learned I don't always have to be tough. I can be tender. How can I be tender? By being love. And this is the passage that really stuck out to me during the vicar year. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, can fathom all mysteries, all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, doesn't envy, does not boast, is not proud, does not dishonor others, is not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. I learned really how to do this I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but I really honed in on how I can be more loving as a vicar, as a pastor to people at Hope, and seeing how they shared love with other people. Now, does that mean there weren't problems? No, there were definitely problems. And we had to resolve those problems. Another thing about people from these other countries is that some of them just, the way we as Americans are polite with each other, that's not polite to them. Ignoring a problem is not polite. They'll come onto a problem and they will talk about it, and they will yell about it. There was one time I remember two men were really hollering at each other in the parking lot, and I looked at Mark and I was like, should we do something? He goes, don't worry about it. It's like, what do you mean don't worry about it? They look like they're going to rip each other's heads off. He goes, no, don't worry about it. This is how they do it. Because this is what they do. They take their problems, they yell at each other about it, and they get it out, and then they're all brothers and friends right after. Because that's how they handle their problems. I had to learn that. Another thing with it being a very diverse place is that section that it's in Toronto, is very Muslim. Very Muslim. A lot of mosques. And there's a Buddhist temple as well down the road. But one time we had a man visiting. He was in full Muslim garb. And during the gospel lesson, as the church councilman was reading the gospel lesson, he got up and just started screaming. And he ran to the front. And he was holding something. And he was wearing a mask and everything. And we didn't know what he was going to do. I literally thought to myself, is he holding a gun? Is he holding a gun? And I thought, do I have to get in my robe right now and tackle him? You know? And he ran up to the front. He just started shouting. I couldn't even understand what he was saying. We ended up calming him down and saying, you can please leave. There's problems. There can be things like that too. But that doesn't stop the church. Yes, we had to address it after the service. In fact, I was doing the liturgy that day, so I literally, after the blessing, I was like, well, we all know what happened. And we can know that we are taken care of by our God. He's watching over us. But people were scared. Like, everyone ducked when this happened because they didn't know what was in his bag, what was he holding. Stuff like that. I'm not saying it happens often. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it can happen there because there's a lot of strong opinions and it's a very diverse neighborhood. But they still persevere and they still have that hope that they've named their church after, that hope that they're anchored to. I think especially with it being Reformation Sunday, with the Reformation at least coming up on Tuesday, is remembering this. When Luther translated the New Testament, some people call it, the September Testament, when he got those things translated, he needed a lot of help from a lot of different people. He needed people with different skills to help him with translating, to help him get it published, to help him get it printed, to help him get it. He couldn't do it all on his own. And I think that's what I learned at Hope, and also I've learned seeing other missions as well. Everyone helps each other. And not just one church, but other churches. I mean, even here, right? It's not just St. Matthew, St. John as well. Helping each other. Because not every person has all the gifts. And that's what I think about with this. Think of the love of Jesus. Because what has the love of Jesus done? Well, first and foremost, it's rescued you from sin, from death, and from the devil. But you know what the love of Jesus has also done? He's given you a body, hasn't he? And I think it actually is a blessing that Jesus has put us in a body that depends on the gifts of other people. That's what we've learned through mission work. We can't do it on our own. We need others. We need help from others. We need to work together. Because not one single person has it all. But when we work together in love, in generosity, and in hope, well, then we can do great things. Not through us, but through God. And we can carry out that commission that he asks us to do. And we get to show those people, who think there has to be something more. And we get to say, yeah, there is something more. And we get to work together doing that. So, any questions? Yeah, right here.
When did Hope start?
Late 80s, early 90s. Oh, what was his name? Harmon, Pastor Harmon, was out there, and they talk about this guy like he was the second coming of Christ. Really, when they would talk about him so highly because he got up there and he's like, okay, go start a church in Toronto. So you know what he did? He just walked around the street and he'd help people. If someone needed a shirt, he literally took his shirt off and gave it to them. Said, here you go. If someone needed something, he's like, oh, let me go do that. Apparently, this could just be a legend. This might not be true. I never met the guy. But I was told also, like, his wife was mad at him. It's like, stop giving people money all the time. You know, because he heard someone needed help, and that's what he did. Because he had such a heart for people. And that's what kind of started it. People are like, did you hear about this new pastor who's just using his gifts of generosity and love? And that's how the church started. And also, yeah, a bunch of Guyanese people were especially looking for a church, a Lutheran church. And then they found one that was just starting.
Where is it at in Toronto? From downtown.
Scarborough. Yeah, am I thinking of that right? I believe it's Scarborough. Yeah. Yeah, so Toronto is made up of like different, you know, there's, now I'm forgetting all of them because I haven't been there in a minute. But Scarborough is one of them. York? East York? I don't know, there's different sections of Toronto, but it's in the Scarborough area. So. Yeah.
So what kind of red tape did you have to go through to get there? Because you were getting paid as a vicar and health insurance and all that.
Oh, it was nuts. Let me tell you. There was an insane amount of paperwork. Wells had to fund a lot of me getting over there, you know, which they do gladly. They send a vicar there every year. But it was also, wasn't the height of COVID because it was 2021, but we were coming down a little bit. And if you know, Canada was very, very serious about COVID. Extremely serious. And if you were an American coming in, they had a lot more rules for you. My wife and I had to show our vaccination cards. Had to do all of those things to prove that we were in fact vaccinated, so we didn't have to quarantine for 2 weeks when we got there. We had to fill out a bunch of paperwork. We had to mark every single thing that we were bringing in. And you know what's funny? My wife made a binder with everything in it. We show up at the border to move in, to get there, and we get to the border officer. We go inside the building, and they're all grumpy and angry. You know, they probably, I can't imagine why they would ever like their jobs, but they keep doing them, so. And he's grumpy, but then he's like, do you have any paperwork? And my wife goes, yep, it's all right here. And he's like, I'm just gonna take this to the back and look at it, and I'll be back. He goes back there for 5 minutes, and then he takes us into another room that kind of looks like a police interrogation room. He brings us back and he goes, you can come with me. Sets it down, flips on the light, we're sitting there, and we're like, oh my gosh, what are we about to get yelled at for? And he says, I wish everyone would do this. This is so nice. You can go. Because we had, you know, my wife had it set up so well with our birth certificates, social security cards, banking information, why I was here, seminary. President Treptow from the seminary wrote me a letter. President Mark Schrader had a letter for me as well. All of these things were set up. They were able to look through it. We were through the border in like 30, 35 minutes. I know other people, it's taken them 2, 3, 4 hours just to get through with all that stuff. But again, because my wife had everything so organized, they were like, we trust you, go on in. Yeah. So there was a lot. I was even telling Pastor before church, when I would go out to eat with some members, we had to show our vaccination cards to the waitress before we could eat. That's how they did it. That's how they did it, you know? That's definitely not here. Some people, I remember I was telling some of my friends about that. They're like, well, that's not right. What about your freedom? And I was like, it's not America. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. You notice it when it says 100. Yeah, you can go 100. No, it's 100 kilometers an hour. Which is like, what, 60 miles per hour? Yeah, everything was in kilometers there too. Yeah, good question. Anything else? Yeah, back there.
How big was your congregation when you left?
It's about 200, a little over 200. I would say about 80 to 100 came each Sunday. That's probably what it was. But there were, you know, I kind of learned who the people were who came every came every week, and then I knew other people who came like every other week, and then I knew people who came once a month. But even the people who came rarely just loved it, you know. So yeah, we tried to work on those people who were delinquent. I remember one time there were people who weren't coming to church. Pastor Mark and I went to their house, and he says, all right, tell me what's going on. Why am I not seeing you in church? And the person just goes, Pastor, I've just been lazy. I'm sorry. And they, you know, and then he ended up coming a little bit more. more. Now, it wasn't every week, but it was like, they were very honest people everywhere. Everything was blunt. Sometimes it would hurt too a little bit, like, oh, Vicky, your sermon was not very good today. They would say stuff like that too. Or there was one time, where one member, she was so mad at my sermon, she said, it was all law, no gospel, all law. I was sitting there. It was about when Jesus' parents left him at the temple when he was a 12-year-old. And, I kind of talked about how, we make mistakes, and sometimes parents make mistakes too, and I kind of related it to that. And then, but my theme of the entire sermon was, he never leaves you behind. Can a theme get more gospel than that? I'm not sure. And so I tried explaining that to her. She's not listening to me. Pastor Mark comes out of his office, and he just goes, his entire sermon was gospel. What are you talking about? She felt bad when I talked about bad parenting because sometimes she was feeling all guilty, so that's what she was stuck on. But that's how it was. They were very, it was, if you preached a good sermon, it was the most compliments you'd ever get. That's not what it's about. I'm not saying that's what it's about. I'm just saying this was the reality. Most compliments you'd ever receive. And if you did not preach one, well, it was the most criticism you would ever receive too. Very honest, very blunt people. But I grew from it a lot. I'm a pretty sensitive guy, pretty emotional, and I had to learn to be thicker skinned than what I was. I'm still working on that, but that helped me grow. Yeah, right here.
Now that you're at seminary, what's the deal with the kids now?
Oh man, I love it because I get to bring that energy that I learned from Hope, that energy in preaching, that energy in teaching, that vibrance that you have to have, and I get to bring that into the classroom. And I know the kids have appreciated it. I think one other thing too that I loved at Hope was during Bible studies, like I said, the people were blunt and they were honest and they would tell you. Right, Kelly? They would just say the darndest things, wouldn't they?
Absolutely.
And you're like, I can't believe do we need to go back into my office and talk about this? But that's what it was. And that made me more open, and how is that translated to my teaching? Every class period, we have some sort of discussion at the beginning, and I've been very honest with the students about my past sins and what I've done, and I've found that they have returned with honesty to me, and I hope that's a breath of fresh air to them, because now my mantra with teaching at SEM is this: I don't want this to be schoolwork, and I don't want it to be boring to you. So I'm going to bring the energy. That means you also got to bring the energy too. That's what I tell them. My assignments, you read the section, you answer one question. I'm not going to make you do a full worksheet because I don't want this to be work to you. I want you to enjoy this. I want you to take some notes. That's kind of some of the stuff that's translated. What I learned there into my call now as a pastor, tutor. Awesome, thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Pastor Muskie.
Do you do any door-to-door work, or is it different with the socialist country?
Yeah, we didn't. We didn't do any door-to-door work because of those kinds of things. They don't like that. They don't want that, and especially with COVID, no, definitely not. So it was a lot of advertising, a lot of, if you are out in public, then you put on a good face. I worked out, I love working out, I love exercising, so I joined this professional bodybuilding gym. I was very small compared to some of the other people there, but I would wear this cross shirt every once in a while when I was working out, and people started to find out, oh, this guy's American, because I also had this American flag Olympic hat that I would wear when I was working out. Like, oh, this guy's American, well, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm studying to be a pastor. Oh, really? And so that was like an open door to me. Just being out in public, doing events with people, like we would go bowling or we would go see movies. We saw, as a congregation, we went and saw the James Bond movie together, and it was a men's night, and we all wore suits to the movie theater. And then we came back to someone's house, and we had Manhattans, and tequila, and everything was shaken, not stirred. It was whole James Bond thing, whatever. And so it was stuff like that, where we are going out into the community. We can't go door to door. We can't knock on people's door and interrupt their day. But if we show the community that we have, not saying that this doesn't create faith. This does not create faith. But it is attractive in some ways because people are looking for community. Now, how about we can give you community, but we can give you more. It's not just a community. It's not just a social club. You can be part of this, and also you hear the gospel every week. Now, guess what? There are people who didn't even become members, and they didn't come up for communion. They came every single week anyway, because they just loved what they were hearing. Now, it takes a little bit of work to explain to them, like, the importance of baptism and the importance of communion. And we would have to work with them on that, because honestly, you can't push people that hard on that kind of stuff, like, right away, you know? But there were people like that. They wouldn't come up for communion. They didn't want to become members, but they just wanted to come every single week and hear. And there were even people who did end up joining because of that, too.
Does that church get a vicar
Every year. Every year, yep. Every single year. I think there was 1 year where 1 or 2 years in a row where they didn't get one, and in fact, some people at seminary said, why would we not send a guy there? That is one of the best vicar opportunities we can have for a man to learn how to be a pastor, especially in a mission field like that. So, yeah, now it's pretty consistent every single year they get one. Also because, want me to be honest, Mark Henrich was an amazing teacher. I've had a lot of friends, I shouldn't say a lot, I've had some friends who didn't have the best experience with their bishop because the bishop was here and they were here. The bishop was rude to them because they were just a kid to them. When I showed up, Mark said, "You're my associate. You're just going to be my associate unless you really start screwing up, then you'll be my vicar. How does that sound?" I said, "Sounds good." And he taught me. I had to turn in my sermons. Eventually it got to the point where he said, "You don't have to turn anything in. You got it, just do it." He gave me a lot of freedom, and if I needed guidance, he gave me guidance. And if I wasn't doing something quite right, he would gently nudge me in the right direction. And I think he's one of the best guys that could teach. Now, I'm not saying he's irreplaceable. Other people had great bishops as well, too. But even before, right, remember this, Kelly? Right when we got called there, what was the first thing people were saying to us? Like about like the family, you know?
They're the best.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, everyone was like, Mark Henrich is amazing. The Henrich family, you're gonna learn so much. And it wasn't just me, you know, like what did you learn through like Molly?
Yeah, the pastor's wife there, her name is Molly, Henrich Molly Stern. She actually went to MLS. She's a twin. Yeah, one of my favorite things about their family is one of their favorite things to do is just invite people over for supper. And I love people and hanging out with people, and so I'm like, come to my house for supper. I'm excited to do that someday when we're in a congregation, but I love like baking for the students at MLS now, and just being hospitable. She's great at that.
So it wasn't just me learning from Mark, it was Kelly was learning from Molly how to be a pastor's wife as well. That was so good. So good.
We got somebody trained because this gentleman probably retired.
Yeah, what is he? What is it, Mark's 62 right now?
62.
Yeah. But I'm not gonna lie, he keeps his body in very good shape. I think last time I talked to him, he's like, yeah, I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. I got a lot in the tank yet. So, he works hard, he does that, yeah.
Because that probably a different, going from America to a foreign country, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot different.
More training and actual, going out into the world.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, it was.
You just don't
yeah, it would be a lot different. Would be a lot different. Well, oh, here, we'll go last one, because I think the ladies are definitely going to be mad at me. I'm going to blame you guys, though.
Project Titus, do they send to the music camp?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they do. They do. Project Titus goes there. In fact, that's it's so funny. We had a group of MLS students there, and now they're my students. Isn't that hilarious? I had no idea. I had no idea it was going to be called the MLS. I had no idea that I was going to end up being a tutor. And now some of the kids that we had there on Project Titus, we even hosted like a little pizza night that we had as well over at a member's house too. And we got to know some of the students. In fact, one student that comes to me in the office and talks to me every once in a while, well, she was on the trip as well too. So yeah, that's been a good little crossover. It's been a good little crossover. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Yeah.
I want to thank Pastor Wallander. You will be soon enough. I want to thank you very much for your presentation. And there's one thing that may make more sense to all of you now. Over the last 3 years, you may have noticed Pastor Muskie is different. He's a little odd sometimes. He's not exactly cut from the same mold as a lot of other pastors. Most guys, when I graduated from the seminary, were still going into established congregations for their vicar year. I was one of the first vicars in mission setting. I went to the foreign country of North Carolina.
They also like it very interactive down there.
Oh yeah. So thank you very much, and now you know why I'm different.
Well, awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. And let's have a good meal. Sound good? Thank you, guys.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's taken a long time.